Why fans are disappointed with Chapter 4. All right, let's see. Here we go.
Chapter 4 has been released for a few days now, and there has been a ton of controversy around
Yeah, it's been getting a lot of hate online, chat. Like the Steam reviews are like bad.
Release, from it being super glitchy, disappointing characters, people saying it's rushed, and so far it even has mixed reviews on Steam, with hundreds of people complaining about the title. But then, why are people so upset?
What y'all think? Did y'all like Chapter 4? Yes or no?
Right, and how have the devs responded? Well, the concerns for this game and its quality started to seep in around the very first Chapter 4 teaser trailer, where we were introduced to the new and highly controversial Nightmare Critters. This trailer was slammed for its quality at the time because there were bad clipping issues, the animation had a bunch of errors.
Wait, was there? I didn't even know that.
There wasn't any sound, it just had music overlaid on top.
I thought it was a good trailer
of it, and of course the game was announced to be releasing in January, only a year after Chapter 3 was released. But fans, myself included, stayed really optimistic because the devs were dishing out tons of lore through the ARG, and when we finally started to get some more trailers for the game, they looked great. They dropped one for Yarnaby, one for the fan favorite Pianosaurus.
I freaking hate Yarnaby.
And of course one for the highly coveted Harley Sawyer, the Doctor, who was revealed to have been revived as this massive all-seeing entity watching over us the entire game. But the main concern people were noticing at this moment was they weren't showing off any gameplay. Mob has never shied away from revealing the new elements of their gameplay early. It's a key reason people love Poppy Playtime, for its unique mechanics. But this time we saw nothing. No descriptions, no teases, and of course no screenshots or gameplay trailers. In fact, we wouldn't get any of those things until just 1 week before Chapter 4, where we would get ourselves our first gameplay trailer revealing the new character Doey, and finally some gameplay, which actually looked pretty good. There was a vocal minority of people worried about the game still, mostly because they thought the lighting didn't quite look right and that the animations weren't perfect, things for the most part that could be brushed off as nitpicks.
I think it looked fine, chat.
At least at the time. But then on January 30th, for the first time ever, Mob would launch their game fully on schedule without any delays. But now some people are wishing they would have. Numbers wise, Chapter 4 was a massive success, shooting well above the peaks of any other chapter up until this point. But as more and more people started to play the game, there were a few glaring issues that began to appear, specifically in 3 main areas: the glitches, the characters, and the gameplay. And first, starting with the glitches, the game had a ton
Chat, what would y'all rate Chapter 4 on a scale of 1 to 10?
Of issues on launch, from soft locking, things not rendering properly, just generally a ton of polishing issues. And while trying to play the game, it's extremely common, if not expected, for the game to just crash for no real reason. These bugs made the game super unpredictable at first, and oftentimes kind of frustrating, especially in relation to one of the biggest gameplay renovations in Chapter 4, the AI. As in this game, instead of using scripted chase sequences, they actually use AI systems that track and chase the player down, both in the Harley Sawyer section and in the Yarnaby section, which, as cool of a feature that this could have been, it actually just really ends up
I hated this section of the game so much,
showing how buggy the game truly is. As in Harley Sawyer's boss fight, his minions are way too easy, and for the most part, you don't have to run from them. You can literally just disregard them. And
I literally ran around them, yeah.
As long as you are consistently going somewhere, they are basically a non-threat. As for Yarnaby's section, these issues were even worse, as Yarnaby would constantly either get himself stuck, literally not spawn at all.
That did not happen to me, let me tell you.
And when he was working properly, his AI's difficulty was an extreme wild card. Sometimes Yarnaby would seemingly never notice you, even if you were directly in front of him, while other times he would spot you from a million miles away.
That's my gameplay footage right there, chat. That's me.
To the point where hiding from him was basically impossible. He would always find you. He also had a really bad spawn camping problem, where sometimes he would spawn right next to you after a save constantly, and there was no way to run or hide because he would always see you before you could really do anything. Now, thankfully, bugs can be ironed out over time, and the developers have began rolling out patches to solve a lot of these issues, which, while unfortunate, it's good. It's at least a temporary issue for the most part. As for the characters, there was a large cast of new toys coming to Chapter 4, along with some returning ones. And while some characters were done a lot of justice, like Doey the Dough Man, and to some extent Yarnaby, at least when he worked properly,
I love that he died right there, man. That's so satisfying.
Harley Sawyer, who was supposed to be the main villain of the game and the one who watched over us through our entire journey, was barely physically in the game. We run through his minions and take the Omni-Hand card while destroying his body parts, and that's really it. They do a great job displaying.
I do think that the Doctor character was kind of disappointing. Like, in the trailers, he looked really freaking cool and, like, really scary and, like, ooh, I have control of everything. I mean, like, I'm watching you everywhere. And then you just kind of unplug him and that's it.
Harley as an evil character in the lore and building up to the boss fight, but it never really felt like it paid off how it should have. And for the new Nightmare Critters and Pianosaurus, people were extremely disappointed after they teased these characters months in advance, just for them to honestly barely show up at all. The Nightmare Critters feature a few times in their mini forms, but there's no bigger bodies of them, there's no story about them, they literally just show up in the game, which made their entire character set feel unfinished, especially since they said they only created them in the summer before the game's launch. And most controversially, there was Pianosaurus, who also had a ton of build-up leading up to the game. Just for us, when we finally meet him,
people were really mad about Pianosaurus, chat, that he wasn't in the game. Honestly, I'm not really, like, I don't really care. Like, it's fine. But, like, yeah, people were really mad about that.
To see him in one cutscene for no more than 20 seconds before Dowie absolutely destroys him in a brutal way, ending his life. His teaser trailer revealing him is unironically longer than the time he spends on screen. But then, regarding the gameplay, as we mentioned, it was a big concern that the devs were super hesitant about showing off any of the gameplay itself up until right before release. And again, a lot of people were disappointed, specifically with the lack of new content, at least considering how long this game was. The only new hands in the game are simply used to scan things, and not many other new gameplay mechanics were really offered otherwise. This overall has led to people feeling like the game was rushed during its development, especially since there was a ton of concern about the title releasing just 1 year after Chapter 3, seeming like the devs didn't have time to fully flesh this out, causing a lot of backlash with a lot of people, some even saying it was a downgrade from
I don't think Chapter 4 was as good as Chapter 3. If I had to rank them, I would go Chapter 3, Chapter 3, Chapter 4, Chapter 2, Chapter 1.
previous chapters like Chapter 3. And in my opinion, I'm a bit mixed with this reception, because while I do agree with a lot of these issues people have been saying, the game's glitches were extremely bad, and a lot of the characters just felt like they shouldn't have been in the game in the first place. I mean, a former mob employee literally confirmed that Pianosaurus and the Nightmare Critters were not written in the original Chapter 4 lore. I still feel like there are a ton of positives to say about the title as well. With the main thing being the lore, this game you could tell is meant to have a more story focus, and while that's for better or worse depending on who you are, in my opinion, it's done almost perfectly. We go throughout the game learning more and more about the main characters and their personalities, while also answering a ton of questions that we've had since the start of the game.
I don't know why that's so funny, but seeing Huggy Wuggy just like die over and over again is so funny.
Culminating into an amazing ending with an emotional finishing of Dowie.
I don't think the boss fight was as cool as Catnap. I will say that. I think the boss fight was not as epic.
Ollie's obvious but still interesting betrayal, and the return of Huggy, which again isn't gameplay intensive at all, but if you are like me and love the lore of Poppy Playtime, this has all of it, more than any of the chapters, and it's not even close. Plus, maybe I'm alone on this, but I really didn't think the gameplay was all that bad. Sure, the bugs affected it a lot and made early playthroughs borderline unplayable, but again, assuming those get fixed soon with them already releasing multiple patches just a few days into launch, I don't think, bugs aside, that the gameplay is all that bad, even if they didn't add as much stuff as maybe we were hoping. For instance, they actually used an AI character a third time for Baba Chops in a scene that I know was annoying for a lot of people, but I actually thought the AI worked well, and
yeah, this one was really annoying.
It was pretty
like this part, this part was super annoying,
intense and fun. Personally, my biggest critique with the gameplay is honestly just that I think it's too easy. When the game
we did not play the same game. What?
working properly, the puzzles don't take very long to solve, and the chases aren't as threatening as they probably should be. But I do feel like despite all of these issues, the game has a ton of redeeming qualities. And to be honest, I think a lot of the reason so many people have been disappointed with this chapter is because Mob has sort of built an expectation of insane growth with each chapter. Chapter 2 made Chapter 1 look like a tech demo, and Chapter 3 made Chapter 2 look like a game in its prototyping phase, while in Chapter 4, we kind of saw the quality plateau a bit and not really exceed our expectations in the same ways the other ones have. And I do think disappointment at its core is why most people are upset. Not even that the game is necessarily all that bad. Again, I still think it's better than Chapter 3.
I don't think it's better than Chapter 3. I disagree with that. I think Chapter 3 is the best one.
Rather that the expectations for each chapter just keeps getting higher and higher and higher, and in the trailers, they hyped up a lot of characters that just didn't really get the justice they deserved, along with the game, of course, being bugged. But with all of this controversy around the game, what does Mob do now? Well, in my opinion, I think Chapter 5, what is likely the last chapter, is going to take a—
I'm gonna be so sad if Chapter 5 is the last chapter. Like, I love playing these games. I'm gonna miss it.
A lot longer to release now, like at least over a year. And I think most importantly, while the story of the next chapter is going to be extremely important, it can't be everything that holds the game up. But thankfully, the developers have actually recently responded partially to all of this backlash. First by saying in their Discord server that y'all really love Pianosaurus, huh? Alluding to them being shocked by all of the support. I don't think they were expecting people to love Pianosaurus as much as they did. Also saying, we have been reading so much feedback. It has been interesting to hear. Every game gets better. Chapter 5 will be even better. We learn so much with each release. So despite all these issues, they seem pretty optimistic, but let me know what you guys think. Were you disappointed, and why?
That was a good video. I liked Chapter 4. I don't think it was as good as Chapter 3. I think Catnap was a way better villain. Like, I think that Chapter 4 had too many characters. That's what I think it was. Like, you had the nightmare critters as like a villain. You had the big nightmare critter, which was a villain. You had Pianosaurus, which was a villain for like 2 seconds. And then you had the doctor, which like he was a villain, but he's only a villain for like 5 minutes. And then like because you're fighting Yarnaby, who's a villain, and then once you fight Yarnaby, it's like, okay, now I'm gonna fight the doctor. And the doctor is like the villain then, and then you just go and unplug him, and it's like, oh, that's it then. And then you're done with the doctor, and now Doey's a villain. So I think there was just too many characters. I think it was just too many characters in it. I think it would have been better if they like cut half the characters out. That's what I think.